Yeah.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Thomas O'Neill. For those of you that know me, we've been doing these series now. I think this is our fifth one that we've done.
Yeah.
We started doing them every week, and then we just decided to give everybody a little break, and we're doing them every 2 weeks. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, pardon me, the last session, we had Luca Ghedavecchi dial in direct from Italy, from Tuscany, and talked about the Ghedavecchi wines and the history of the wines there. Today we're going back to Bordeaux, back to France, and three really tremendous wines that we're tasting through today. Two from the right bank from Saint-Emilion, that region, and then one from the left bank in the Haute-Medoc. All different vintages. So 2015, a very warm vintage, lots of big fruit, and you can certainly see that expressed in the Cruzeau today. Lots of jamminess to it. I compare 15 to 09 and maybe even 89, and 16 has that and more, a little more structure, and I kind of compare, in my mind at least, the 16s to the 2010s and the 1990s. So again, back-to-back vintages. Everything the 15 has, but a little more, touch more acidity and structure, as I said. So I think probably the 16s are built to age longer. And then the 2012 from the Haute-Medoc, which was a tremendous year for them, Chateau d'Agassac. We were able to visit Cruzeau and d'Agassac, Mark and Raji and I, when we were there this past September. And the picture that Mark sent out on d'Agassac the other day is it's just a storybook chateau building. I mean, it's just you look at it and you go, it's just right out of a postcard. It's so beautiful. And,
it's so
yeah,
good.
it's just gorgeous. And they've got just some absolutely gorgeous cellars as well that we walked through and saw the oak barrels and the wine aging. They haven't shortened themselves on spending money to keep that chateau and the buildings in absolute tip-top shape. So wonderful experience there. d'Agassac is very, very close to Bordeaux City, about 15-minute drive, so fairly close. I completely screwed up meeting Guillaume there, who I'll introduce in just a second. This year I rented a car in downtown Bordeaux, and it was last September in the middle of their construction season where everything was one way, and I got the car about an hour before I was supposed to be there, thinking I got lots of time, swing back to the hotel, pick up Mark and Rajni, and head out to the chateau. And they've got a lot of roundabouts in Bordeaux, and if you just miss one of the offshoot streets from one of the roundabouts, it means you got to go all the way around the neighborhood again, and heaven forbid there be a construction zone. And then you got to go around for another 15 minutes and get stuck behind a flagman and all that stuff. So needless to say, we were almost about an hour late for our appointment, which was quite embarrassing because we had a whole day lined up with Guillaume. So having said that, let me introduce to you, for those that haven't met Guillaume Clark before. Guillaume is the export manager for the Americas for a negociant company called Compagnie Médicaine. Compagnie Médicaine is probably, well, it is the largest negociant or agency that we buy our Bordeaux wines from. It's owned by the big insurance group called AXA, which not only do they own Compagnie Médicaine, but they own some chateaus. They own Pichon-Baron, which is probably their most famous chateau that they own, which knocks out some incredible wines. They own Petit Village. They also own, in Portugal, they own the port house Quinta de Novo, which is arguably the best port producer. Plus, they own some other chateaus in France, and I think one in South America as well that Guillaume will talk to us a little bit about today. I met Guillaume because the first time that I went to Bordeaux, I was the cellar master for the Commanderie de Bordeaux for about 5 years. There's about 100 chapters of the Commanderie de Bordeaux around the world, and there was something called the Mondial there, where they bring every 4 years all the different members of the commandery in for a 4-day celebration and meetings, and it's very informative. And as I at fear of repeating myself from previous videos we've done, it was just a tremendous experience for me. The first night was City Hall with the mayor, and every day seemed to outdo the other with the chateau owners. And I met so many wonderful Bordelais and you know, over a dinner, my very, very, very poor French and this gentleman who owned a right bank in the Côte de Blaye Chateau introduced me to some wines there from his chateau, and I thought I was buying 2 cases of wine, but he thought I was buying 2 pallets of wine, which is 112 cases. And eventually I did buy them and bring them in, and that was the start of Grand Cru Imports. And it sold so well. I sold the whole 112 cases in just over 2 weeks, and realized there's probably a little niche market there for these very small production chateau producers, and Guillaume will inform us, but I think it's something like 8,000 or 10,000 producers in the Bordeaux region alone. And many of them don't see their wines go even outside of France. And so I went back to Bordeaux, and I got to know the managing director a little bit of Compagnie Médicaine, who works with Guillaume, George Alsalter, and said, you must have a number of these small petite chateaus that have no representation in lots of spots in the world. In particular, I'm interested in Vancouver or British Columbia, and could you introduce me? And he sent me with his manager at the time, and we spent a few days going around and meeting all these kind of mom and pop producers, and that's really how we started to build our portfolio. Cruzeau was one of the original ones that we brought in. I think it was the 2009 and then the 2010 vintage. Crobonneau was one of the first ones we brought in as well. And Dagessac, this is the first relationship encounter we've had with them with the 2012. But if you've been through our catalog and ordered wines from us in the past, we probably have, at any given time, total amount of chateaus that we've represented may have been as high as 25 or 30 over the last 10 years. So it's been a tremendously fun project. I've really enjoyed getting to know the Bordelais, and in particular, I really enjoyed spending time with Guillaume. Mark and I had him here in Jacqueline in my office. We shared a lunch for a small group of about 24 or 25 people at Don Francesco's when the wine festival was on in February, and that was a big hit. We introduced some new wines that aren't in the market, and some wines that are well known, Pichon Baron, that we're going to bring in on kind of a one-time purchase. So having said that, let me introduce you to Guillaume Clark. And Guillaume, it's an honor for you, for us, for you to be here with us today. So maybe you can share your story, a little bit about Compagnie Médicaine, a little bit about Bordeaux, and then anything you want to share about these wines as we kind of work our way through these 3 wines today would be greatly appreciated. So thank you for joining at midnight in Bordeaux, and I'll throw the table over to you.
Thank you, Thomas. And yes, thank you, Mark, for organizing this virtual tasting. This is very funny thanks to technology, to be able to share this time together, this experience together, and I am very honored to be able to participate to this tasting. So, like Thomas said, I'm the export manager for North and South America. I am based in Bordeaux, but I lived a couple of years in New York, covering the same region, and so my job is to promote and develop the distribution of the wineries that we represent. Compagnie Médicaine des Grands Crus, being owned by AXA, does represent the vineyard of AXA, which includes Pichon Baron, as you said, Thomas, Château Pibran, another property in Pauillac, Château Petit Village in Pomerol, Château Suduro, which is the first growth in Sauternes. We also own Quinta de Noval in Portugal, as you said, Domaine de l'Arlot in Nuits-Saint-Georges in Burgundy. We also own Dischneke, which is the first growth in Tokaj, Hungary, and we just acquired a property in Napa Valley 2 years ago. So we are the name of the property in Napa Valley is Outpost. And so we have the chance to have wineries all over the world, but mainly in Bordeaux. And in addition to those properties that we own, we distribute most of the classified growth, and we do have a selection of about 100 exclusive Petit Chateaux in Bordeaux. As you said, there is about 8,000 wineries in Bordeaux, so we only represent a small portion of the production in Bordeaux, and we are lucky to have a very we've built this portfolio years after years, and so we think, I mean, we have like a great selection. We've been able to build a great selection over the years. About myself, so my family is from Ireland originally. My last name is Clark, which is not very French, as you can imagine. And my family came from Ireland in 1690 to Bordeaux, and since then we didn't move. So Thomas, do you want me to introduce like some wine, or give like a general explanation about Bordeaux?
I think maybe what I've done in the past is just share a little bit about the terroirs and the difference between the left bank and the right bank, and then maybe you can give us a little history of these three chateaux, and then I can do some tasting notes along with you. Want to taste along or share your notes along with us. So, you know, I've told everybody that the left bank is predominantly, like if you go there, it's very flat. It's the terroir for the most part is gravel, which is what Cabernet Sauvignon loves because it likes to fight hard to get its moisture, and so we see Cabernet Sauvignon predominant wines on the left bank. And the soil structure is a little different on the right bank, a little more rolling hills, Lyons on a hill, and we see more sand and limestone and things like that there, which hold more moisture, which is obviously more favorable to Merlot and less favorable to Cabernet Sauvignon. So, having set you up with that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the terroir, and then if you lead from that into the wine section.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to try not to speak too loud because I have 3 little kids who are sleeping. So if you don't hear me, let me know. Okay. I'm going to try to keep the sound low. So as you said, Bordeaux is a I mean, brings together different terroirs and different traditions, different classification. And this could have been like different regions, but because it was all around Bordeaux, and because Bordeaux was the commercial center, it became under Bordeaux appellation. And the right bank has nothing to see with the left bank in terms of terroir. Starting with the right bank, it's slopes of limestone and clay and sands, which are following the Dordogne River, and it's small villages with small properties. Most of them remains family-owned properties, and this is also an area in Bordeaux which has much more history, because this is one of the original areas of production. The Romans who came to France 2,000 years ago, they started to plant vineyards in the right bank around Saint-Emilion. So people have been making wine in this area for 2,000 years. When you go to Saint-Emilion, it's extremely charming, and very, very attractive to walk around, and there's a lot of churches everywhere because of the history. Also many religious orders, many monasteries, many churches have been built over the years. And just if you walk around in the village of Saint-Emilion, there is like 10 churches, even though this is a very small medieval village. And as you said, Thomas, the grape that best fits the terroir, which is a cold and humid terroir, because of the majority of clay, is going to be the Merlot. That will be completed with the Cabernet Franc for the most part, but it's going to be dominated by the Merlot. On the other side of the river is the left bank, and north of Bordeaux is the Médoc area, which has been producing wine only since the 17th century. So only 300 years of existence producing wine, which is small for Bordeaux. And there was a big investment from the bourgeois and the aristocrats from Bordeaux during the 17th century, finding that they could make great wine thanks to a very grassy terroir. And so there is a lot of big properties in the Médoc. It's many big mansions, with big properties, and it's been difficult over the years for families to keep those wineries to keep the ownership of the wineries. And so today, most of the wineries are actually owned by large companies like AXA, like our company. And that's the same for Chateau d'Agassac, which is owned by an insurance company. And as you said, it's very flat, and the terroir is dominated by gravel. And so it's a very warm terroir, which is perfect to ripe the Cabernet Sauvignon. And so the king grape variety in the Médoc is going to be the Cabernet Sauvignon. Do you want to start with Agassac or with the right bank or left bank?
You probably, let's start with Agassac because it's a right bank and it's a little more age on it, and then we'll work our way to the right bank. How's that?
Okay. So Agassac, I just said that the Médoc is a new region for wine producing. And it's true that before the 17th century, the Médoc, which is north of Bordeaux on the left bank, was for the most part a marshland. It was very humid, very hostile land, and basically they were very dangerous too, because you had like a lot of disease, bad people, wolves. And so at that time in the Médoc, you had to protect yourself. And so after the 11th century in France, you probably know, but the Queen of France decides to divorce the King of France and marry the King of England. And her name is Aliénor of Aquitaine, and she was the owner of the whole Aquitaine, which is the whole southwest of France. And so suddenly, by this divorce, the whole southwest of France becomes English. And so it will take about 100 years for France to recover and win back this whole southwest part of France. And so in this area of France, in the southwest, it's been like a whole century of war between English and French. And so this is the 100 Years' War. And so you have a lot of castles built in the whole southwest, because the aristocrats, the noble at that time, they could not be guaranteed to be protected by either English or French. They had to protect themselves. And that's the reason why Chateau d'Agassac was built. It was built during the 100 Years' War between French and English. And so it's actually the oldest chateau in the Médoc, dating back to the early 12th century. I think the exact date is 11. It was built in 1160. So very, very old property. And Chateau d'Agassac is located at the gate of Bordeaux, as Thomas said, just below the Margaux appellation. It's a beautiful medieval chateau with moats, surrounded by moats, and with a terroir of gravels, and but very small gravels. And so this terroir is very warm. And actually, Chateau d'Agassac is usually the first vineyard to be harvested in Médoc because of this unique terroir, very warm, pushing the maturity of the Cabernet Sauvignon. What distinguishes Chateau d'Agassac is that the wine is going to be very much on the fruit. The winemaker is obsessed with the ability to reveal fresh fruits on its wine, and it's not very common in the left bank, in the Médoc, which usually makes more austere wines, which are going to be on the power and on some kind of complexity, but not on the fruitiness. And one of the things they do, which is very interesting, is that they are using Burgundy barrels to make the wine because they are bigger, and so they like a lesser contact with the wood. And this is really reveal the fruitiness. They are diminishing the wood to bring up the fruit. Also, their wines is always very, ripe and unctuous with delicacy. I would say this is what represents the wine from Chateau d'Agassac. The 2012 is a very, very good vintage for the winery, and one of the reasons is that the blend on Chateau d'Agassac is, as we said, dominated by the Cabernet. This is 55% Cabernet Sauvignon, but there is still 45% of Merlot. And in 2012, the Merlot were exceptional. And the Cabernet Sauvignon could ripen only on the best terroir. And d'Agassac was one of the property that was able to have a very ripe Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's an interesting vintage 2012 because you have the ripeness of the Cabernet Sauvignon, and the Merlot are very ripe too, but because it was not a too sunny and too warm year, you keep a lot of freshness in the wine. Something else about Chateau d'Agassac. Chateau d'Agassac was classified Cru Bourgeois in 1932. And in the Médoc, you have the classified growth classification. You have 60 classified wineries, over about 2,000 wineries, and those are like the most famous wines. And the second league is the Cru Bourgeois, which was classified in 1932. And you have about 200 of them. So we can say that when a wine is classified Cru Bourgeois, that it belongs to the 15% best wines. In 2018, Cru Bourgeois decided to make a new ranking, and Chateau d'Agassac was classified Cru Bourgeois Exceptional. And Cru Bourgeois Exceptional means that the wine actually belongs to more or less the same league as the classified growth wines. So that's like that's really a big revelation for Chateau d'Agassac, and that confirms that the wine belongs to the best wines of the Médoc.
Sure. Guillaume, I have a question for you. Given the fact that you shared with us that the right bank has been making wine for 2,000 years, and the left bank's only been making wine for 300 years. When Napoleon did the classification of the gross in 1855, why did he not consider any of the wines from the right bank? Was it because they just considered the best wines to be on the left bank at the time, or what was there any reason given to why that none of the wines on the right bank were classified?
it's funny because I think at that time, Saint-Émilion was not considered as Bordeaux. It was Saint-Émilion.
Okay.
Like for Pomerol, it was Pomerol. And I think that's one of the reasons.
Okay.
And another reason is that the classification of 1855 was done based on the price that the wine were selling for, and also of the popularity of those wines. And to be able to have a certain recognition and popularity, you need to have some volume. And I think the right bank wines, being like smaller vineyard, they could not, they didn't have the success exporting the wine that the Medoc had. Also, the merchants were more likely to purchase wines from the Medoc because it was new land. And we know that the English merchant or Dutch merchants or Irish merchants, like the Bartons, for instance, they were more likely to purchase wines, vineyard on the left bank, because this is where the new land was available. So this is the wines that they were trading the most. Also, all the new nobility, all the generals from Napoleon, basically. Napoleon the First and Napoleon the Third, they established a new aristocracy. And this new aristocracy is the one that massively invested in the Medoc.
Okay.
And so I think that it probably helped, those wines to be famous or more recognized by the government at the time, whereas the Saint-Émilion and Pomerol were mostly owned by the old aristocracy before the French Revolution.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would imagine because and the Irish had a fair say in the Medoc. Well, there's Chateau Palmer and your name, Chateau Clark. So there was definitely some Irish owners in the Medoc that owned chateaus and produced wine there. Correct?
Exactly. Yes. When my family arrived from Ireland in Bordeaux, first they were merchants because they had no money. So we had, I think, 2 small ships, and we were shipping wine that we purchased, that we were buying and shipping it mostly in England and Ireland, but mostly in England. And when we had enough money, we purchased a vineyard. At that time, it was like we needed to have a land, and so that's all the waves of immigrants that came, Irish or Dutch, and they wanted to buy their land. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you also have, among the Irish families, you also have the Barton family.
Yeah, for sure.
The Felon, the Lynch family from Chateau Lynch-Bage.
Yeah.
All the same family that came in France for the same reasons at the same time.
Is anybody out there drinking the Dagasac? Does anybody have a glass of that in their hand right now? Craig Perry, you got a glass of everything, I'm sure.
I do as well. It's a deep voice.
Tell us what you think of this wine. What do you smell on it? What do you taste on it? What do you like about it or don't like about it?
I only set up lunchtime. I thought it tasted a little bit light and I didn't really like it. But I've left it open for a couple of hours. Sort of opened up. I quite like it.
Oh, good. My notes from earlier were definitely some red fruits I get on this, a bit of tobacco, menthol, a little bit of cedar, lovely nose. And being 2012, it's got a few years on it, got 8 years on it, tremendous color on it, drinking well right now, certainly with some red meat for sure. I've got a nice little charcuterie plate going here today, put it in front of the camera here. And I've been sipping this and the other wines and having a little bit of food. And I think this wine's in a very good spot and certainly not going to go downhill anytime soon. So if you've got some of this, enjoy some now, and it would definitely perhaps even improve a little bit with a little bit of time. So if you've got some, enjoy. Guillaume, maybe you can take us over to the right bank now and talk a little bit about the two wines that we have from the right bank, Cruzeau and Crobonneau. As I mentioned, I've been bringing these wines in for a number of years now, and I was one of the pictures that Mark sent out. I think it was today or in the last few days. This is a picture of me with the father and son, the Lucot family. Just lovely to see a father pass on his business and acumen and to his son. Really, really down to earth people. They used to make their wine in cement tanks, and I was there in, I believe, the first vintage that they moved over to stainless steel, and I remember seeing them take the old tanks out. The stainless steel was there, was 2012, and I was ultra impressed with the 2009 and 2010 of their wines. And when I tasted some of the barrel samples in 2012, I thought it's maybe because they've gone to stainless steel for their fermentation process, but I just thought, wow, this is just very elegant and has turned up a notch, and obviously a very good year in 2012 for the Merlot grape, as you said, Guillaume. So maybe you can give us a little bit of history. Just a few notes that I have. The Chateau Cruzeau was started in 1907. It's only on 4 hectares, but I think when we were there last year, they had just purchased another small parcel. 15% of the wine sees new oak, and they only produce about 2,000 cases, in my notes, 26,000 bottles. So pretty small production. And the average age of the vines I've got written down here is about 45 years. So some really nice mature vines and grapes. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more and add on to that, please, Guillaume.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good presentation. So the Lucot family have been owning this winery since 1907, as you said, but the history of the chateau dates back for much older, because the chateau dates back from the 16th century.
Wow.
It's actually impressive because it's such a small vineyard, 4 hectares, and they've added 3 new hectares with a very high quality vineyard. I think in 2014. So on the 15th, they have added the new parcels on it. But so it's so small, and it's not on the famous roads that no one drives by this property and no one sees it. So this is a little gem which is hidden on the west. The southwest part of the Saint-Émilion appellation, and it's quite interesting because the winery is actually closer to Pomerol than Saint-Émilion. So it's very close from Taillefer, and it's going to be on the same side of the appellation as Chateau Figeac or Cheval Blanc, Chateau Cheval Blanc. The particularity of this terroir is that this is made of gravel, sand, and also the famous iron dust that we find in Pomerol, and that makes these amazing flavors of Pomerol. So the wine is a Saint-Émilion Grand Cru. So that means that this is the higher quality level possible in Saint-Émilion. The wine is not classified, though I think potentially with the quality they're making and the care they are giving to the wine, they could be classified in terms of quality. I mean, I compared this wine with many classified growth, and it's pretty much the same quality. I don't tell them, obviously, because they would raise the price significantly.
But keep it a secret.
Yes.
Keep it a secret.
Yes, I'm not going to tell them, but maybe because of the size of the property, they can't. I'm sure if they could, they would do it. But so for me, it's always been like amazing value in Saint-Émilion. Um, the 2015 vintage was a very sunny vintage, and so the Merlot are absolutely gorgeous in 2015. The blend of this wine, as we discussed, is a majority Merlot. It's 85% Merlot and 15% Cabernet Franc. The Merlot is going to give a beautiful fruity, aromas. We're going to have like cherries aromas, but also some like black fruits aromas. And the Cabernet Franc is going to bring the freshness and also the a little bit of the spiciness in the wine. What amazed me with Crusoe is obviously this is very fruity and very perfumey and very nice to drink. The first sip is going to bring all those fruits and this freshness in the mouth, but you have a lot of like finesse, elegance, and a very very long finish, which is very clean and very balanced. Sometimes Saint-Émilion or the right bank in general are too heavy, too alcoholic. This is not at all the case with this one, where we are on the finesse and elegance. I'd love to have this wine with duck confit, or with cheese, any kind of cheese. And I think the 15 is great to drink today, and you can potentially age it for 5 more years.
It's a beautiful wine. I love the nose on it. I get lots of the Cabernet Franc for me is always a grape that gives wines a very nice perfumey smell to them. I always like the aromatics from Cabernet Franc, and that's what I get on this right away, is that really nice perfumey nose, and I get lots of chocolate on this. Lots of dark berries, but lots of chocolate on my nose. A mix of kind of milk and dark chocolate. I just love this wine, and just been a favorite of mine since the very beginning when I first started bringing in their wines. But year in and year out, they seem to produce exceptional quality wines, and their prices are consistently very very reasonable as well.
Yeah.
Anybody else drinking the Crusoe today?
Mate, that is delightful. I love it. Wow.
Yeah, we've sold a lot of this wine. We've sold. We had limited amount of cases when we brought